live from London, this is BBC News. Rishi Sunak says he's incredibly angry to learn of allegations that Conservative insiders have been betting on the election date.
But what I can tell you is if anyone is found to have broken the rules, not only should they face the full consequences of the law, I will make sure that they are booted out of the Conservative Party.
Some breaking news this hour. The suspended Chief Constable of Northamptonshire, Nick Adderley, lied about his naval achievements and committed gross misconduct, a panel has concluded. We'll have more in a few minutes. A gang of cybercriminals say they've published sensitive data hacked from a blood testing company used by leading NHS hospitals. The England football manager Gareth Southgate has admitted his team is falling a little bit short of expectations after drawing 1-1 against Denmark at the Euros. Hello, I'm Maryam Moshiri. Welcome to BBC News. Well, 2 weeks today, we will have the results of the general election. And all the parties are continuing on the campaign trail this Friday, with Labour in Scotland, while the Tory party is in Wales for the Welsh Conservative manifesto launch. But last night saw 4 party leaders grilled by a challenging question time audience on BBC One. Rishi Sunak was asked about the investigation into alleged bets made by 2 Tory candidates, as well as the party's director of campaigning and one of his own close protection officers. Well, the Prime Minister said he was incredibly angry and that anyone with connections to him or the Conservative Party found to have broken gambling rules should face the full force of the law. Meanwhile, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, was pushed on his previous support for former leader Jeremy Corbyn, who he said would have made a better Prime Minister than Boris Johnson. Sir Ed Davey of the Lib Dems and the SNP's John Swinney were both grilled on the NHS, on trust and on past promises. But it was the Prime Minister who arguably faced the most challenging questions of the evening on the alleged betting scandal. When asked why those under investigation hadn't been suspended from the party, he said they'll be booted out if they were found to have broken the law. Here's our political correspondent, Damien Grammaticus.
Rishi Sunak arrived in York knowing tough questions were coming. Allegations to Conservative candidates, plus the party's director of campaigning, who's married to one of them, may have been betting on the election, and the Gambling Commission looking into it all.
Well, like you, I was incredibly angry to learn of these allegations.
Given that, he was asked why he hasn't suspended the candidates.
But what I can tell you is if anyone is found to have broken the rules, not only should they face the full consequences of the law, I will make sure that they are booted out of the Conservative Party.
On the issue of quitting the European Convention on Human Rights to get Rwanda deportation flights off the ground, he was challenged. That would put the UK in the same club as Russia and Belarus.
I'm going to put our country's national security first every single time, and I make absolutely no apology about that.
Shame on you.
The Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer entered the arena. He wasn't asked directly about the gambling issue, but turned to it anyway.
The first thing is, I want to return politics to service, because I think it's got far too much into self-entitlement. Look at the gambling stuff that's going on today. Politicians who think that making money or self-entitlement is the reason they're in politics. So we need to return it to service.
He was asked when he said Jeremy Corbyn would make a great Prime Minister, did he mean it?
Look, he would be a better Prime Minister. Well, look what we got, Boris Johnson. A man who made massive promises, didn't keep them, and then had to leave Parliament in disgrace.
Did you think he'd make a great, not even just a good, a great Prime Minister?
I didn't think we were in a position to win that election.
To the SNP's John Swinney, the question, would he rather see Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer in Downing Street?
I think the Conservative government's been a total disaster and a calamity, so it can't be out of office quick enough, in my view. I think it's an absolute racing certainty that the Labour Party will win the election in England, and I hope people in Scotland will recognise the importance of having strong SNP voices in the House of Commons who will argue for decisions to be made in Scotland for Scotland.
And for the Liberal Democrat Sir Ed Davey, questioned, was his manifesto just a wish list, given he had no chance of becoming Prime Minister?
I think we've got great ideas, and I think we've been getting great responses.
Are you trying to persuade people that you can be Prime Minister?
Listen, I'm realistic about our chances, right? We've had 3 very bad elections, everyone knows that. And when I became leader, I said my top priority was to defeat as many Conservative MPs as possible.
So do you think you can or cannot be Prime Minister? We might as well hear it from you.
Well,
we know what the polls
it would be
say.
challenging given the polls.
OK.
But I don't want to put a ceiling on our ambition.
So tough questions all round, though nothing perhaps that will radically change what's happening on the ground in this election. Damien Grammaticus, BBC News, Westminster.
Well, there's been further reaction from politicians to that question time. Deputy Labour leader Angela Rayner was asked on BBC Breakfast about Sir Keir Starmer's response, which you saw there, when he was pushed on his previous support for former leader Jeremy Corbyn.
Like Keir, we both served in the Shadow Cabinet because we wanted to put an opposition forward to the Conservatives, and that was our duty to do that. Me and Keir were both in the 2015 intake, and it's fair to say that the wheels fell off politics a little bit over the coming years after that, and we wanted to put forward a robust case and push for a Labour government, and we both tried to do that. But it's also very clear that we got hammered in 2019. The British public rejected Labour and felt we didn't put a case forward for the country, and that's why Keir, when he was elected as leader, said we can't carry on like this. We have to change the Labour Party. We have to put a credible, costed plan forward that can change Britain for the better, because we've seen the disaster that we've had over the last couple of years under the Conservatives.
Well, here's the Wales Secretary, David T.C. Davies, who was asked on the Today programme on Radio 4 if he was worried about the party's reputation over allegations Tory insiders had been betting on the election date.
Of course I am. You know, I took a decision when I entered the Wales office as Secretary of State that I would do 2 things immediately to set an example. The first was to get rid of the ministerial car. So I've been happily travelling around on the tube ever since, which I don't think is appropriate for all cabinet ministers, by the way, because some of them have more security issues than I do. The second thing I did was to look around, notice there was alcohol in the building, and ask for it all to be removed within 48 hours, for there to be no alcohol to be served at any official Welsh Office of Defence at all, and for nobody, including, and of course, especially myself, to be drinking alcohol at any official functions at any time of the day or night. And that's how I've conducted myself.
OK, so
in the last 18
those are the things
months
that
or
are
2 years
important to you.
office.
Well, there he was answering questions from my colleague Michelle Hussain. Let's cross live now to Westminster and speak to our political correspondent, David Cornock, who's there for us. And David, let's start by talking about Rishi Sunak. And, you know, it just seems that life is getting harder and harder for him these days. One problem goes away, or seems to, and another one rears its head.